As absurd as it looks, there's actually an Eiffel Tower in the middle of China. Tianducheng, a Parisian fantasy in the form of a luxury real estate development in China, has been gradually built out since 2007. Despite China's well-documented love for all things French, the ambitious development hasn't translated into success for the developers hoping to cash in on China's aspirational European tastes. Let's analyze how China's foolish copy of Paris cost them $1 billion. Not quite a century ago, Shanghai was known as the Paris of the East, or it became one of the cities to enjoy that reputation at any rate. Today, you can catch a high-speed train in Shanghai and just an hour later arrive in a place that has made a much more literal bid for that title. Tianducheng, a district modeled directly on the French capital, complete with not entirely unconvincing faux house-manian apartment buildings and boulevards. Struggling to attract residents in the years after its construction on farmland on the outskirts of Hangzhou in 2007, Tianducheng soon became regarded as one of China's overambitious ghost towns. Although it looks eerily similar at first glance, this isn't really Paris, and it's quite far from France. Urban development in Chengdu City was a spectacular failure. On the outskirts of Hangzhou, a major city just an hour's bullet train ride from Shanghai, rural farmland is being repurposed for grand projects that are fast becoming the stuff of legend. Over the years, China has built stunning replicas of internationally known monuments. In Shenzhen, you can walk through the Window of the World amusement park located between the Sphinx and the former World Trade Center buildings. The world's largest man-made structure is located in Chengdu with a vast man-made beach and an artificial sun. In Tianducheng, investors were eyeing Paris. Developers began construction of Tiandu City in 2007, and a 1:3 scale replica of the Eiffel Tower and a replica of the Luxembourg Gardens fountain were completed. In the original plan, the capacity was 10,000 people. Currently, the city's population is about 10% of that. The streets are empty, storefronts are boarded up, the iron railings are rusting, and the famous fountain is dry. Some of Hangzhou's wealthy middle class flocked to Tiandu City with wide eyes, hoping that it would become popular. A replica of Paris and Zhejiang might convince local tourists that they don't need to travel abroad when France's greatest attractions lie at home. Unfortunately, due to soaring real estate prices and changing economic growth, there are very few visitors. Those arriving are usually curious travelers, wedding parties, and photographers on day trips from nearby cities. Young couples love taking wedding photos in front of the Eiffel Tower, but there's no other reason to stay here. Much of the city's fault lies in its strange location. Tiandu City is surrounded by acres of farmland, and Tiandu City itself is about an hour by public transportation from Hangzhou Central Station. Bizarre as it may seem to those unfamiliar with recent trends in Chinese city building, Tianducheng actually belongs to a one-of-a-kind imitative tradition. On the outskirts of Beijing, a replica of Jackson Hole, Wyoming is outfitted with cowboys and a Route 66, red telephone booths, pumps, and statues of Winston Churchill pepper the corridors of Shanghai's Thames Town. The town of Fuzhou is constructing a replica of Stratford-upon-Avon in tribute to Shakespeare. Surrounded by a confusing mix of farmland and wide, abruptly ending roads, Tianducheng is now considered by local media to be a ghost town, its population well short of the 10,000 it can support. Earlier this year, Henry Graybar wrote about China's architectural copycat culture, citing some of the unique details of what it's like to actually walk around Tianducheng in particular. Tianducheng, a miniature Paris near Hangzhou, has an Eiffel Tower over 300 feet high and a replica of a fountain from the Luxembourg Gardens in a main square called Champs-Élysées. But it also has a driver in a top hat and tails who drives a horse and a buggy to a yellow church at the top of a hill, where a Chinese priest in black robes and white clerical collar stages Western wedding ceremonies at an altar hung with a cross. Around the globe, many such mysterious abandoned cities stand out as dormant time capsules. China is no stranger to building spectacular replicas of famous places. However, Tianducheng, like many themed towns, seems to have failed miserably as it was unsuccessful in grabbing the attention of the people. This project was started in 2007 by the Chinese government as part of the preparation for the expected dearth of housing with a surge in population in the near future. This knockoff version of Paris, despite its eerie resemblance, exists mainly as a ghost town today. Originally built to house 10,000 residents, the city now has 10% of that population of 2,000 residents. The empty streets, widely unoccupied houses, and boarded-up shops bear testimony to this new age ghost town. Scattered around a long barren landscape in the countryside with its very own 300-foot tall Eiffel Tower, Tianducheng is a project that was doomed to fail. The primary reason stems from its odd location and abruptly ending roads amid hectares of farmland located 2 hours south of the modern metropolis of Shanghai, making it less accessible from the nearby city transportation. Added to the high real estate prices and change in economic growth, Tianducheng has resulted in cheap replacements for wedding photographers and young couples looking for picture-perfect backgrounds. According to a news report, only half of the residential tower blocks were completed by January 2015. The city is home to the Eiffel Tower, the Luxembourg Gardens fountains, and a miniature version of the Champs-Élysées. Despite its charm, Paris's neoclassical buildings and cobble streets were not the Paris of the East they had hoped for. Mansard roofs and boulevard housemen are visible through the fog and hazy gray sky. The gardens around the Eiffel Tower are littered with people selling dumplings instead of baguettes, the waterways on the Champs-Élysées are dry, and store doors are locked. There's only one hotel in the city that accepts foreign guests, and its name is Tianducheng International Resort. Several restaurants around the property mainly serve traditional Chinese cuisine. The only real estate agent in town doesn't have enough counter space to display all the properties for sale, and the office is dark and dingy. Residents now use the lush Parisian garden to grow vegetables. The attention to detail is indeed impressive, down to the small details such as replicas of the street furniture. On the contrary, the only bustling end of the city is the construction site where new residential buildings are coming up each day, and the Investors Information Center, which houses a 3D model of the completed version of the town. The jarring juxtaposition of the Chinese signs decorating the European buildings acts as a constant reminder of where one is. In an underwhelming amount of foot traffic, Tianducheng has a ghostly feel to it. Paris-based photographer Francois Prost decided to travel to Tianducheng to document the town's recreations of the architectural wonder. He created a series of drawing parallels and comparing the likes of the city, which seems to be similar only in architecture. He described the city as very much rooted in Chinese culture and is yet to carve an identity of its own. Francois Prost believes Tianducheng's proper identity is more likely to evolve over the next half-century depending on what the people living there make of it. In recent times, there's been a steady rise in the number of residents. However, the city remains mainly abandoned. It's expected that if the urban cities ever spill into the countryside, Tianducheng will be equipped to house people in its Parisian apartments. When asked whether cultural elements other than Parisian architecture and urban planning have permeated Tiandu City, he replied that much of the city is still rooted in Chinese society. The people living in Tiandu City, most of their daily lives are the same as in other parts of China. Most middle-class families live in the suburbs. It also didn't have the nightlife of the City of Lights. People go to bed early and wake up early. As for food, the restaurant mainly serves traditional Chinese cuisine. Well, let's not criticize other people and other cultures. Tiandu City says a lot about the Chinese people who were able to build this great project in a very short period. However, on the other hand, people don't seem to like this excessive praise of European culture. It's a little different from Europe. The question is whether Tianducheng will finally be able to find its own identity after being reflected in one of the world's most famous cities. But it really depends on what the city is like, and the people who lived there at the time somehow created it. It's their city that they can shape. So, there you have it. So what do you think about this bizarre ghost city of China? Does Tianducheng's proper identity evolve over the next half-century? Comment your thoughts down below, and do smash the like button and subscribe for more videos. See you guys later.